Hey guys, I'm Beck Cranford and welcome to Spirituality for Your Mother. This week, you just get me. We've got some great speakers lined up for you, but for today, I wanted to chat just a little bit about pain, triggers, trauma, and the trailhead to healing. So, sit back, grab your coffee, and get ready as we jump in. In 2013, I got this amazing dog. She was so great. She came to me while I was working at a shelter. Two of my friends who were experiencing homelessness, one of them happened to be a sex worker, found this amazing dog and was just like, hey, and they walked in with this tiniest little bundle of brown and white brown fluff. And they were like, Beck, do you want to hold this dog? And I was like, sure. And as soon as I held the dog and brought it close to me, it was over with. I texted my mom and my boyfriend thing at the time, and I was just like, I found a dog. And they were like, oh, what are you going to name it? And I named it Saint Basil the Wonder Worker. And Basil came into my life, and Basil was my soul dog. She was with me thick and thin. I took her on road trips. I took her to the beach. I took her to Louisiana. I took her to Texas. I took her to Florida. She loved me like no other anything had ever loved me. And I love that dog. And she was present with me when we found out that my brother had passed from suicide. She was present with me when my father died suddenly, when my grandmother Rose, that I loved ever so much, passed away, when my grandmother Vivian died, when my marriage imploded, and when I had to close my church plant. And she was my soul dog. I mean, she really helped me grieve. She would just come and be with me, and I would not cry. I love that dog so much. Man, did I love her ever, ever, ever. And a few years ago, Basil lost the ability to walk. She was part lab. As you all know, labs can have hip issues, especially if they are spayed or neutered too early. And she had hip dysplasia where they just wouldn't work. They were gone. I had called several vets and got price estimates, and one vet quoted me $4,500, and that was impossible. I was working at the time again in homelessness, and it's not a lucrative field. I wasn't making big bucks. It was a ministry to me, working on the streets. So I did the best thing that I thought I could do. And I remember she was laying, just yelping, in such pain. And she lost control of her bowels, and I knew it was getting close, and I wanted to clean her and pick her up and, give her some medicine, and just love on her until it was time. And I picked her up, and she was in horrible pain, and I was trying to help, and she bit me, and she she drew blood. Her teeth went pretty deep into my hand. It was painful. And I didn't react oh, how could you hurt me? I knew she was in pain, and I knew that's the reason why she bit me. Well, fast forward or back up or rewind or skip a timeline. I'm not sure what we're doing, but I when I was going through some heavy grief, I had a roommate named Josie who I'm a pretty stern, like 8 on the Enneagram, and he's a big 2 on the Enneagram, and we both have our issues. As a matter of fact, someone once told me that I had extremely sharp elbows in the spirit. One of my first students at Candler School of Theology said that I was a holy Debbie Downer because I let her know that some chocolate was made by slaves. So she was upset about that. But Josie, one time he was dating this girl, and she, my God, was she ugly. Sweet, but just ugly. And he, he really liked her, and I didn't. I couldn't see why. I mean, it must have been personality, but it definitely wasn't looks. And he brought her to the house. That's a mean, horrible thing to say this morning, isn't it? But she was, God bless her heart, she was ugly. And he brought her to the house, and I was just in this mood. And she walks in, and she's like, "Hey, my name is Bethany." And I was like, "Oh, hey, did you know your name means house of affliction?" And she was just like, and I was like, "Yeah, Hebrew, like, welcome to suffering. Suffering's great. It's a promise of the Lord." And like, I kind of go on this tangent. And then Josie's just like, what is wrong with you? Like, fix your face, fix your heart, fix your words. Like, I was just such a jerk. Such a jerk move to say. Again, holy Debbie Downer, right? Or sharp elbows in the spirit. But I was just, I don't know, I was kind of on a tear. And this was long before I was diagnosed or medicated, but I just went outside, and I remember just kind of crying and screaming at God. And again, everything had fallen apart, and it was just a really rough time. Josie, later, he ended up living in the same household with me and a couple other people. It was a time in which everybody who was gay and kicked out of their house in Douglasville was like welcome to live with me. And I was grieving really heavy one night, like just wanted to be alone and in my grief. And isolate. Like, that's kind of one of the things that I do. Like, if I'm not in a good mood, like, I'm going to isolate. I'm not going to be around people. And I was attempting to hide and isolate, and Josie wanted to, like, comfort me. And so he came to my door, and he knocked on the door, and he was like, "Hey, this is me caring for you and caring for you in your grief." And I just remember being like, "Shut up, Josie, and go away." And he was just like, "Beck, I love you." And he just kept saying it through the door, and it was really getting on my nerves. And I was like, "Josie, I need some space. Please leave me alone." And then it was quiet. And then 2 minutes later, he knocked on the door. He's like, "This is me giving you space, letting you know that I love you from the space between us." And I threw a shoe at the door. It was pretty loud. But I wanted to be left alone. And I was like, again, on a tear, like really just mad, mean, like just aggravated. So I've been very reactive in my life and very triggered, and I was triggered a lot. I used to get triggered all the time by so many things. I mean, I had rejection dysphoria syndrome for most of my life, and really like filtered everything through the lens of rejection or trauma. And like, there were so many live wires of pain that were active in me and activated in me all the time that people couldn't help but bump up against them. And I would often be kind of a jerk. And one person told me one time, they're like, "You're very prophetic." And I was like, "I'm very angry. Like, I am pissed off about everything that injustice, especially in the world, but also deep on the inside, pissed off about what had happened to me, like just all the injustices that had happened to me, from, sexual abuse to church hurt, church abuse, spiritual abuse. I mean, just all the things." And I used to get real bristly, especially around men. Like, I just, could be quickly triggered by males and just didn't want to be around them. That friend said I had sharp elbows in the spirit, and it stuck with me. And then one time I was complaining about somebody's anger energy, and a very sweet woman who was in ministry, whose name was Laura, said, I recognize the anger in you, and I've tried to give you a wide berth. And I was like, oh, the anger in me. And it was just anger that lived with me constantly. It was like a constant anger that I used to fuel the work of, solidarity and dignity and activism here in Atlanta, working with those that were unhoused and just, and I was doing some self-care work. Like I was getting some therapy, but I didn't ever really do a lot of trauma therapy because I just was like, well, that was the past and this is the future and we got a lot of work to do, and I just didn't care myself. And I think a lot of activists and advocates do that. A lot of helping professionals, a lot of people that are strong, 8s on the Enneagram, like they're just going out there being chief defender, challenger, and working for justice or Jesus or love or whatever, or activism, advocacy. And they don't really take care of themselves. And when Laura said that thing to me about my anger, I was just kind of like, I thought about it. I really didn't start doing a lot of deep trauma work and shadow work until 2022, when I was standing at a gas station about to pump gas, and this man who was having a psychotic break came up to me and was like, had a knife at my neck and said all this horrible stuff about how he was going to kill me. And I recognized that energy. And when he said that stuff, like I lost the ability to speak. I heard a loud ringing in my ears, like I had a migraine that wouldn't stop. I have a dog that's barking outside. Be right back. So there I was at the gas station being faced with that guy who was having a psychotic break, and that ringing in my ears and that migraine and the inability to really do anything about it, which was strange because I was always so strong, And as this was going on with him, I had this memory, a painful memory of standing in the hallway and my father just raging, and me and my mom and my sister just being there, and my dad taking this belt and just beating us all, with this belt and screaming and raging and yelling. And I remember that energy that man had, and it was the same sort of energy that my dad had. That was the same sort of energy that Laura said that I had. It was this rage, murderous energy. In that moment when the man had the knife to my neck, I just couldn't do anything, and I finally muttered and stuttered, and I said to the man, do you need help? And with sudden clarity, his eyes flashed and changed. He lowered the knife and he walked away. The people that were at that gas station called the police, but I don't know if they found the guy, if they got him help or whatever, but it was my cue to start getting help. So there was a lot of underlying trauma that I needed to address. But when people used to come against some of those traumas and some of those triggers, I used to react with that same sort of explosive energy. And I knew nothing about resiliency or, the kingdom of God within. I had heard things like peace, joy, and righteousness in the Holy Spirit growing up. I had heard a lot about that, but I don't know that I had ever experienced emotional regulation or even knew how to emotionally regulate. I mean, I had so much trauma upon trauma as a child. I mean, I used coping mechanisms that weren't healthy to assist with trying to find some sort of emotional regulation. And in 2022, I had, a break from reality that was brought on by trauma and kind of an identity shift after leaving a career and kind of shifting gears. And that experience, they came out and they're like, you're bipolar. And I cried. I mean, just the stigma of having that and the weight of knowing my family with that. It was a difficult season. But it sent me on a healing journey. I think what I'm getting at, and I'm going to try to shorten this up, but I think what I'm getting at today is that, and that was, that wasn't the last time I was hospitalized. Like, there were several other times that I had some real awakenings to the deep trauma that I had experienced as a child and was able to process it. And I have a support team and a care team now, and yet the doctors noticed, the insurance noticed I hadn't had a refill on a certain medication, and they called me to see if I was okay, because I'm a high morbidity risk. As a matter of fact, I've had life insurance policies canceled on me because of my diagnosis. Like, I mean, if you think there's not ableism around in the world, wait till you get a certain kind of diagnosis and see how that goes for you. Like, yeah, I mean, it's just a stigma. And then, people say all kind of mean, horrible things all the time about people that are bipolar, and they don't know that our brains are so beautiful and wonderful and amazing that they actually keep us from experiencing trauma. People don't realize the overlap between ADHD and bipolar, and just, I don't know. There's such a stigma about it. But enough about that. I think the triggers to our deep pain are the invitation for us to go and do the work. My current dog, who is not my soul dog, but who is a sweet dog, is chomping on a bone in the same room, so it's pretty loud. And you can hear her chomping on the bone. Hey, lady, why don't you come over here for a second and be quiet? You want to? Come over here and I'll pet you. So she's chomping on the bone, and she's going to come see me too, so I'm going to pet her because she's a sweet baby. And this sweet baby has a little bit of anxiety when it rains and when it thunders and when there's loud noises. And she's just so sweet. She's a sweet girl. She too's kind of a lab mix. She doesn't look like anything like Basil. She looks a lot more like a lab. And she's also a rescue, because that's the best kind of dog. And I think those of us who have attempted to rescue ourselves and done a lot of healing work can be the best kinds of dogs. But we also can bite people when we're hurt. We're responsible for the way that we treat other people, and we're responsible for the way that we respond when we are triggered. And we are responsible for our energy when we remember pain, when we remember the negative, traumatic things that happen to us, and how we respond to injustice. There is a certain mechanic within some circles, especially leftist circles, this sort of air of being right and correct about everything, and how they don't care if they hurt anybody or belittle someone in the name of justice, because somehow that makes this superiority, that's what it is. It's like, oh, well, it's injustice, so I can be a jerk to you about it. No, you can't drop basic decency. I mean, you can if you want to be a twat waffle, but like, it's not a nice thing to do. And I've seen that like call out culture for such a long time, like just walking in certain circles, like just people calling out other people for injustice, which, I mean, again, yes, help us move towards justice. And I'm not talking about like horrors upon horrors. I'm talking about like just simple things. Like somebody said something about a tuna sandwich on, social media, and then they're getting, lit into by complete strangers on the internet who are like internet Karens that are, telling them that their sandwich is full of patriarchy or whatever. I mean, there's real hell and real suffering in the world, and, the internet social justice champions are whatever. I just like do the work, right? So I'm not bypassing real trauma, and I'm not bypassing injustice, but I'm saying that we are responsible for the way that we respond. And I reached out to a guy a few weeks ago, and it's been like over a month now. And a very interesting person. Thought he was really cool. Definitely wanted to have him hang out just because just a great guy. And I was very interested in him. The energy seemed good. Seemed like he was a match. Seemed like a good thing. And he had had a death. And I misunderstood who had died. It seemed like it was his father, but come to find out it was his lover. But I had reached out and I was just like, I'm so sorry that your father passed. Please let me know if there's a way that I can help out with funeral expenses. And I just said some other nice things, and he lit into me. How dare you bring up my father? How dare you do this? How you're a horrible person, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, whoa. The reaction that he gave me, I felt it. I felt it come into my chest and get all into me. And then I was like, whoa, what am I doing? I forgot to be boundaried. I forgot about it to just not even, let anything come into me. And I was like, oh my God. And so I was like, I am so sorry. I misunderstood. And I put it on pause. And then I think he realized that it was not my intention to throw him off. And then, he was like, oh, I realized you may have misunderstood. I didn't correct him or anything. I just didn't want to have anything to do with him. After that moment, I was like, man, you need to go get some healing. I don't want to be around that vibe. And those are the vibes in me that I have to check on too, right? Like those places where I'm so triggered, I'm so hurt that I respond and I react with hatred. And I'm not talking, look, I've got to say this again and again and again. I'm not talking about active trauma or active abuse. You need to get away from that. You need to call that out. Active injustice, you need to call that out, right? You need to speak up. But when someone is reminding you of something and you feel a visceral reaction, that is your trigger trying to tell you that this is still a place that you need healing. I've heard it said so many times before that when we're healed, we tell the story differently. And I saw just an ad from this church that I used to attend. It was the Smoke Machine mega church that I used to help out with. And they said something other about, being a welcoming place. And I was like, yeah, wink, wink. We welcome you as long as you fit the mold with us. You can belong here, but you can't participate in anything. That's, I was like, that's not belonging. And I thought about that. And I was like, you know what? That's who they are. Whatever. I don't want to keep rehearsing that story in my mind. And then I started thinking about it and I was like, I'm just going to unfollow these people. I don't need to see them in my life. It's the energy that we had. It was a different relationship, a different time. And I can get some work on the trauma that I experienced working at that Smoke Machine place, and in some of the pain that I caused. I know I definitely caused some pain. So these are the triggers, and those are the trailheads for us to get some healing. As my dog loudly chomps on her bone. I guess what I'm saying for you today is you're responsible for your healing. No one else is responsible for your healing. You are the one that has to do the work. And when you're triggered, when you have a very visceral reaction, when someone knocks on your door and says, oh, hey, you have pretty eyes, and you open up and your eyes are the eyes of a dragon and you breathe out fire on them and kill them with your words and your energy, that's an indication that there's still work for you to do. You need to go get some freaking therapy, right? Ought to see this, ought to see that, ought to see a therapist. Haha. That's an Odyssey joke, in case you didn't get it. But, seriously, dude, go get some therapy. Work with a spiritual director. Work through your trauma. If you're having triggers, those are the trailheads inviting you to go get healing. That's simple. That's what it is. Don't judge yourself for getting triggered. Don't judge yourself for being reactive. That's a protective measure. Like, your body created that to protect you, right? Like, you're reacting this way because you want to stay protected. And then my second thoughts on all of this is to those of you who feel deeply, like to the empaths, intuitives, whatever you want to call it, discerning, whatever you want to say about yourself. Like you may have compassion on people because you recognize something that you've experienced in them, or you've went through such pain and you see them and you're like, oh, I want to help. Be careful. Be so careful, because that energy that they're experiencing isn't yours to hold. And the energy that you're feeling, sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's a collective, baby. Sometimes it's the world's pain that you're feeling. And you've got to get that to let it go, right? Like, you don't need to hold on to that. You need to let it just move through you and not be impacted. And that's not to say that you're not impacted by injustice, that you don't feel deeply and you don't feel compassion on people, because you do, but you can't heal anybody. You can't change anybody. You can't save anybody. You're not Captain Save-A-Ho, as they used to say, out on the streets working with sex workers and people experiencing homelessness. You can love and care for people until they find self-worth and they're like, okay, I got to start my healing journey. But it's their journey to take. It's not, we don't want to interrupt their healing process. And yes, there'll be people who'll try to heal us along the way. And yes, there'll be people who try to bring us advice along the way. But, you just can't help people. And then what is it? Why do you want to help people? Is it because you, as an empath, an intuitive, a discerning person, learned that as a child? Like, maybe you had to take care of an alcoholic parent, or a parent who was mentally ill, or a parent who was abusive, or you had to watch for subtle energy changes, so you pick up on those things now, or out of a survival mechanism you were caring or tending for someone. I used to reach out to mentally ill people on the internet all the time that were like creative and gifted, and I would just be like, oh man, you're so creative, you're so gifted, like, oh, you're just awesome. And I used to do that a lot and really encourage them. And then I had this one guy who kept like, just oversharing stuff, and it got a little weird. And then I realized it was my fault because I had set up the expectations for that relationship, and I was giving him a lot of encouragement, just as I tried to encourage my own father who was mentally ill. And I realized, I think I'm trying to fix my dad by trying to fix this guy who was not fixable and who wouldn't listen to any sort of correction or anything. He was just out there doing his thing, thinking he was okay. But it wasn't my job to fix him, my job to heal him. He didn't ask me to fix him. He didn't ask me to heal him either. Some people may come to you for advice or for healing, and if they do, give them advice, heal them, do, whatever consent's given, if it's a fair energetic exchange. But don't overextend yourself to help others and put your needs on the back burner. And I think that's enough for today. But remember, those triggers, those responses, those reactions, those are the trailheads to get some healing. And just one more story. I was at this large conference many years ago, and this woman was leading a workshop, and I didn't really know who she was, but she knew who I was, and I was in the audience, and she called me out, and I was surprised that she called me out. And then she said from the stage, "You never called me back. You never responded to my email. You must think you're so that." And she called me out publicly, like not a private, not any sort of, Matthew 18 and 19 kind of stuff. This was like full-on public ugliness. And I was just like, and then I was like, who the hell is this woman? Like, I don't know her. Like, if you email me, I'm going to do the best I can to respond to you. Maybe the email went to junk. I don't know, but it was just kind of a jerk move for her to say, but she was obviously hurt and triggered by it. And I was just like, oh, like, I didn't know. That wasn't my intention to, like, miss her or something. And I've had many moments like that. One time I was driving this bus and I was talking to some people, and I had a mentally ill person who was on the bus who was quite active on Twitter at the time. And I had started talking to some other pastors, and this one person gets on Twitter while we're in the same van. And I was a pastor of the Misfits at the time, and she was basically like, the pastor of the rejects has rejected me. The pastor of the outcast has made me the outcast. The minister and reverend of the Misfits has made me misfit. And I was just like, what the hell? Like, I am in the same van with you, and you're tweeting about this because I'm not giving you any attention right now, you crazy psycho. I didn't say she was a crazy psycho. I did ask her to get some help, and I set some pretty firm boundaries after that. But, like, people are just going to react, and they're responding out of things that we don't know about, like their mom issues, their dad issues, whatever they're projecting, whatever trauma. And it's rarely about us. I mean, so many people, they just walk around like a live wire waiting to get triggered. And I mean, it's ultimately their responsibility. Yeah, we want to be careful with people. We want to love people. We want to meet them where they're at. But like, that's their work to do, that's their healing work to do. The cat has now come over here to say hello to you. Anyways, hurt dogs are going to bite people. It's your responsibility to heal yourself.